Please, thank you. So please.
Firstly, I would like to thank and extend my sincere gratitude to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi for your warm welcome to India. It's always a great pleasure to visit this extraordinary country, and to do so in these historic circumstances makes it particularly special. I would like also to thank His Excellency Piyush Goyal for his unflinching commitment to this important project, and for the enthusiasm, insight, good humor he demonstrated on each step of this journey. I'd like also to thank both wonderful negotiation team who managed to make this moment happen. By signing this agreement, the United Arab Emirates and India are writing a momentous new chapter in our shared history. The UAE-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is a milestone for us both that builds on decades of enterprise and exchange to establish a new era of progress and prosperity for people in both countries. Last summer, in preparation for our nation's Golden Jubilee, the UAE government launched a series of bold initiatives to pave the way for the 50 years of growth and opportunity. The goal was clear: to double the size of the economy from 1.4 trillion dirhams to 3 trillion dirhams by 2030. This required bold new strategies for diversification, including embracing the fourth industrial revolution, integrating advanced technology across the economy, enhancing our research and development capabilities, and incubating the industries of the future. It also meant inviting foreign direct investment into key sectors, attracting the world's brightest talents, and rebuilding our trade partnerships. These plans also have a vital near-term goal to rebuild our economy from the impact of COVID-19. The pandemic impact on free flow of goods has impacted every aspect of economic life, from manufacture to construction, from retail to medicine. It understood the importance of our global network and need for strong, reliable, transparent supply chains. But most of all, it was a reset that challenged us to adapt a new perspective and expand our international trade ambitions. Strengthening bilateral relations with key partners around the world became a key pillar as we sought to increase trade volumes to and from UAE, enhance our status as a facilitator of global trade, and accelerate investments and joint venture opportunities. It was entirely fitting that India, one of our oldest allies, was the first country we reached out to. And it is to sign up for our long-standing economic and cultural ties, the mutual respect and trust built up over the last 50 years, that they responded so positively. The fact we were able to agree the terms of a deal of this size, scope, and importance within 5 months demonstrated the power of our shared vision. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that the UAE-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement will be regarded as a towering achievement, a new era not only for our two nations, but for global trade. Our negotiation covered 18 separate chapters, and the result is a deal that will eliminate our reduced tariffs on more than 80% of goods, facilitate further investment in sectors such as hospitality, healthcare, logistics, construction, professional services, promote collaboration in key future industries such as agri-tech, food security, advanced technology, and renewable energy, provide a platform for SMEs to engage, collaborate, and expand into new markets. For the UAE, it offers our exports access to 1.4 billion people and one of the fast-growing markets in the world. For India, they will gain frictionless gateways to rapidly expand economies in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and dynamic business-friendly platform for industries and innovators to flourish. The projections are clear. It will add 1.7% or $8.9 billion to our national GDP by 2030. It will boost exports by 1.5%. It will take bilateral trade beyond $100 billion within 5 years. We believe that this deal has a far-reaching implication of global trade. The leaders at the G20 summit in 2020 said that the trade is now more important than ever. And as we emerge from the global pandemic, this CEPA will uphold our commitment to a free, fair, inclusive, and non-discriminatory, transparent, predictable, a stable trade and investment environment. The UAE and India are vowing to keep our markets open, and together we can help redraw the global economic map. The benefits for both parties are clear, and we are confident they will be shared by the whole Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia region. Ladies and gentlemen, the UAE has turned the page on its next 50 years. We're entering the third phase of our economic story. We're transitioning to new industries, new capabilities, new partnerships. This CEPA, with our long-lasting, trusted ally, will be the foundation stone for this next era of success. Thank you again to the Prime Minister Modi and to Your Excellency Piyush Goyal for your commitment to this process and for the friendship that we cement today.
Thank you, sir. Now we request His Excellency Dr. Thani bin Ahmed Al-Zuhadi.
I will not go before you.
Please.
No, I will not go before you.
May I request Honorable Piyush Goyal ji to address all of us, give opening words.
Thank you very much for your very warm words, Your Excellency. Thank you, Dr. Thani, for your leadership of the last many months of painstaking effort, which, if I may call, was nothing less than a labor of love to work towards the success of this comprehensive economic partnership agreement. Thank you, Dr. Al-Banna, His Excellency the Ambassador of UAE to India, who initiated the original dialogue, breaking away from decades of uncertainty in our relationship, our efforts to try and get an agreement between the GCC countries and India, and was willing to chart new territories and new avenues between the UAE and India for mutual benefit and the prosperity of both countries, the UAE and India. As India celebrates 75 years of independence and UAE celebrates the 50th anniversary of its foundation, it is an appropriate time to reset our relationship, taking it to much greater levels than ever before. And ever since 2017, when both countries embarked on a comprehensive strategic partnership covering a very wide array of subjects, ever since the growing bonds between the leaders of the two countries, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and His Highness the Crown Prince of UAE, we have been witnessing a growing synergy between the two countries and a deepening of the bonds of brotherhood between the people of the two countries. Both the UAE and India are natural partners because we complement each other. There's hardly any element of competition between these two major economies. We are both for rules-based fair trade. We both believe in engaging with each other in a spirit of reciprocity, and we both believe that the people of both countries, businesses in both countries, should mutually benefit from our deepening engagement. And I think that is truly the defining factor which helped us conclude a comprehensive economic partnership. Mind you, friends from the media, this is not an interim arrangement or an interim agreement. It's a complete and comprehensive economic partnership finalized in the shortest possible time that any such comprehensive agreement anywhere in the world has witnessed in history. To my mind, an agreement covering such a wide array of subjects, covering free trade, covering digital economy, covering government procurement, covering many strategic areas, an 881-page document, legally scrubbed, protecting the interests of businesses and the people, not for a year or 2 or 10 years, but for decades. After all, free trade agreements have to literally use the crystal base and look into the future. Done in 88 days, was a 24-hour engagement, the teams working day and night, Honorable Minister Dr. Thani, under the leadership of the UAE government and with the blessings and support of His Highness the Crown Prince, with deep engagement from my good friend Minister Abdullah, and a regular contact almost every second day on the phone, every 4 days on a video conference between the ministers, the teams working, burning the midnight oil, 88 days, and we've concluded one of the most balanced and fair and equitable free trade agreement. I must compliment the teams on both sides, the team from the UAE led by Mr. Juma, and the team from India led by Joint Secretary Dr. Shrikar Reddy, who is here with us today, literally working in a spirit of brotherhood and friendship, resolving issues as they came, and in a spirit of understanding each other's sensitivities. Friends to the media, this comprehensive free trade agreement or economic partnership covers a wide array of gains for both economies, provides opportunities for businesses in both economies, and if I may share with you some of the major sectors which will benefit in India: gems and jewelry, textiles, leather, footwear, sports goods, plastics, furniture, agricultural and wood products, engineering products, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and automobiles. And most of these sectors are largely labor-oriented, and we do believe that this will open, as we grow our bilateral trade to $100 billion, at least 10 lakh job opportunities for young boys and girls, will open up a plethora of opportunities for our MSME sector, our agricultural sector, our value addition in terms of food processing, supporting the UAE's food security, and clearly will help the people of both countries get new opportunities to work with each other. The United Arab Emirates also will get opportunities in a variety of areas of their strength, particularly in metals, minerals, petrochemicals, petroleum products, dates, which are a strength of the UAE, and in a big way can support our own efforts to provide nutrition to our people. So in a way, it's a win-win for both economies, for the people of both countries, and for businesses on both sides. There are a few firsts in this agreement which I'd like to share with you. On the pharmaceutical side, the UAE has been very gracious in accepting our request that once a medicine or a medical product is accepted by developed economies like the US, European Union, UK, Canada, or Australia, and it goes through the rigorous process that these countries have, the rigorous regulatory process, the UAE has very graciously, for the first time ever, and to my mind for the first time in the world ever, agreed that such products will get market access and regulatory approval in a time-bound manner of 90 days for being marketed in the UAE. Similarly, we have had some very robust rules of origin to protect both economies from any misuse. We have brought in very robust trade remedies in our agreement, and we have also, for the first time ever, agreed that to avoid any misuse on the steel sector, melt and pour will be necessary in their respective country before it becomes categorized as a domestically produced product. This is something the steel industry has been demanding for many years, and I'm happy to share that both countries will get the benefit of the rules of origin, including melt and pour for the steel sector. This agreement also has provided a permanent safeguard mechanism which will safeguard exporters from both countries and businesses from both countries from any unnecessary or unwarranted surge in volumes of any particular product. We will also be providing a huge market access in India to a large aspirational young India wanting to get high quality goods and services. Simultaneously, the UAE being a large trading hub will open opportunities for the African continent, for Europe and other countries in the Middle East. And therefore, in some sense, it opens market access opportunities on both sides to very large markets. I'm also happy to share with you that this agreement rests on three pillars: the pillars of transparency, the pillars of talent, and the pillar of trust. And these are two countries whose leaders have demonstrated to the world a great strategic partnership, a great bonding of brotherhood. They in fact address each other as brothers, Prime Minister Modi and His Highness the Crown Prince. And this is an agreement which brings in the economic dimension to a deep and enduring strategic partnership between the UAE and India, between the political leadership and the people-to-people relationship in both these countries. It has immense potential for further strengthening and diversifying the trade basket between the two countries, and I am sure going forward will become a template for both countries to use for other engagements. As you are aware, we are already at an advanced stage of negotiations with Australia, with the United Kingdom, with Canada, with the EU, with Israel, and I can only share with you that we are also in dialogue with the GCC to consider expanding the horizon of trade and entering into an economic partnership with the entire GCC region also. Friends from the media, this is truly reflective and an announcement of a very, very deep engagement between our two countries, and I'm sure going forward, businesses and people in both countries have huge gains from this CEPA. I would like to thank all of you for joining us, and I'd like to thank many friends from the media, international media, including media from the UAE, who have also joined us virtually for this press engagement. I'd just like to mention one thing that I thought I'll share with you, that this entire process was in the midst of COVID. And while COVID waves were hurting economies all over the world, including the COVID wave the third COVID wave that both the UAE and India had to face. So I must say that this is also reflective of the new emerging world order, the post-COVID world, which will see different alignments and realignments, in which we see the UAE and India as strong partners with a very, very deep engagement going forward in the post-COVID world. Thank you. My good friend, Dr. Thani.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Good evening, everyone. It's really great honor to be here with you on this momentous and historical occasion for our two nations. Let me join my dear brother, His Excellency Abdullah Montog, in expressing my deep gratitude to both Prime Minister Modi and His Excellency, my dear friend and brother Piyush Goyal, for their warm reception here in India, and also for their vision, dedication, and flexibility throughout the CEPA negotiation. Let me as well express my gratitude and my deep appreciation to both teams on who managed to conclude this in a very short period. From both sides, they showed the flexibility and the friendships throughout the whole process. It was clear from day one that we shared the same sense of purpose. And if our businesses, innovators, entrepreneurs engage in the same spirit, there is no limit to the progress we'll make together. The UAE-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement marks the beginning of the bold, exciting new era of our nations. It promises to unlock a new era of hope, optimism, and opportunity for nearly 1.4 billion population, and comes at a time we need it most. It's an agreement that will expand market access for exporters, remove barriers of trade, create platform for SMEs to collaborate and expand, and accelerate the flow of all forms of capital, financial, technological, and human resources. And to restate the numbers mentioned by His Excellency Abdullah bin Tog, this deal will add 1.7% or around $8.9 billion to our national GDP by 2030, boost exports by 1.5%, and see trade between our nation exceed the $100 billion within the 5 years of ratification. Importantly, we have worked hard to produce a rule-based, pro-business, mutually beneficial deal that will boost the private sector in both countries. There are strong governance procedures and legal mechanisms in place to prevent misuse and ensure that both parties gain the full benefits from the agreement. We have been able to do this by setting preferential rules of origins that align with the trade policy of both countries, ensuring our industries are able to compete on a fair and equitable basis, establishing a robust governance and appropriate trade remedies. Once ratified, the UAE-India CEPA will represent broad new horizons for exporters, service providers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. Have now in place structure of tariff elimination that cover key sectors such as aluminium, copper, steel, petrochemical products, and other goods and services from different sectors. Services exports are also covering by 11 sectors and more than 100 subsectors. These include the likes of businesses and communications, construction and related activities, education, healthcare, social provisions, environment, finance, insurance, tourism, travel, and transport services. Importantly, this agreement also includes a chapter on the increasingly significant area of digital trade. Through the CEPA, our nation have worked to establish a modern framework for digital commerce, including data protection and digital consumer rights, digital payments, digital signatures, and digital identity, and secure data flow. Ladies and gentlemen, the UAE-India CEPA will unlock a new era of opportunities for our private sector. For the Indian businesses, it will offer an open market for manufacturing, advanced technologies, tourism, industrial machineries, and precious metals, ready access to essential products such as petroleum, minerals, and chemicals, investment capital to boost capabilities and logistics, energy, and ICT, and are the gateway to markets in Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Emirati companies, meanwhile, can look forward to access to the 5th largest economy in the world, greater opportunities for service exports benefiting our vibrant finance and travel sectors, a vibrant startup ecosystem, especially in fintech and e-commerce, and increased tourism and highly caliber talent. In reality, through this agreement, there is no limit, and we look forward to seeing how our business communities will create a new area of collaboration and opportunities. We have already seen this in action. In recent years, our companies have come together on solar power projects, food corridors, logistic infrastructure, telecom, and many other sectors. In conclusion, the UAE-India CEPA may have been negotiated in just a few months, but it has been built on 5 decades of trade, investment, and exchange. Our relationship has proved to be resilient and flexible and able to evolve and adapt to the needs of the complex and uncertain world. This agreement is a logical next step, and it's one that will create opportunities for our economies and our people for generations to come. Again, congratulations everyone, and we're looking forward to working with everyone to implement the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. May I request, we'll be taking some limited questions. We'll stay focused on the deal that we have done, specifically, nothing else. May I request Siddhant, who's got the first question? Yeah, please, be on. Can you introduce yourself also? Yeah.
Hi, sir. I'm Siddhant from Vion. My question to you, sir, is there are reform measures in UAE, number of reform measures, including the fact that you've changed your weekend as well. How does this FTA fits into the larger reform measures by your government? And to Piyush Goyal, sir, my question is that how does it opens wider market in the West Asian region with this FTA for Indian goods?
Thank you very much. I think the reform, everyone is on a reform path for the economy, given that we have went through a huge pandemic, an economic pandemic that really hit the world. We have an economy that looks at a post-COVID and a pre-COVID time, and I think it's important when we set place back in 2020, the change of the commercial law to give 100% ownership for foreign direct investments. Then we came into the commercial transactions, the rebound of checks amended, and then as well the aspects of the reform from the talent attraction of golden visa, green visa, freelance visa to attract talent to really be the fuel of the future economy. As well, from that kind of aspects, last year in 2021, we celebrated our 50th year anniversary, and from there as well, we launched the 50 years projects. One of them, which is important, was the SEPA program that we have entailed, and this is something that really shows the aspects of the reform and that the country is actually fit and ready. The country is moving towards a new trade regime, and I think it's important to look at as well. There is a huge aspects of changes that really now for investors, business people, SMEs needs to take the place to actually start putting things into transactions, into business deals, into investments for the next couple of years. And let me say one thing which is very vital and important, that we realize that this agreement comes in an early stage of the year, which is the year of 2022. Which really gives a recovery for the economy, which gives a message as well that both nations are ready and fit for the future investments. We want the year to start off as well with great aspects of positivity during the pandemic.
Thank you.
I just have to-
Please, sir has to add.
Well, I think it's very logical because the UAE has over the years built a reputation of a trading hub on which people have both the faith that it works very seamlessly, very smoothly, and it has created very strong backbone of financial systems, the port systems, the logistics chain that they have created, and therefore any such deepening of exports or relationship with UAE will certainly help us gain access to other countries in the West Asian region, in the entire African continent, some parts of Europe very closely linked with the UAE. So UAE is like a gateway for a very large region for Indian exporters.
Thank you. The next question is by 63, please. Please introduce yourself. Meghna.
Good evening, sir. I'm Meghna Mittal from Newsrise. Many congratulations on the FTA. I wanted to ask that under the FTA, on how many items has India reduced the tariffs, and are there also items on which we have scrapped the duty completely?
Well, there are many items on which in this FTA we have been able to get concessions from the UAE, and many items where we have given concessions to the UAE, both countries ensuring to protect each other's sensitivities and areas of interest where we need to protect any domestic concerns. The agreements have been made by both countries after extensive consultations with stakeholders, that is the domestic industry on their side in UAE and our side in India, with the respective departments in both governments. And therefore I said earlier that this is a very balanced agreement. If I go into the detailing, I think almost 90% of the trade both ways, what we import from UAE and what we export to UAE, which originate in each other's countries, will get significant benefits from this agreement. And obviously the advantage of UAE is that we don't have much where we are competing with each other. We complement each other. If you will see the trade basket, products that we get from the UAE are products that are good for Indian industry and Indian economy. very often there are raw materials, very often there are intermediate goods, products which power our energy sector. And similarly, we provide many products to UAE which help their economy grow better and faster. For example, food security. And and that's the strength of this partnership. Two sets of businesses and people who support each other. And at this point, I must share with all of you that we have a 35 lakh Indian origin population working and staying in UAE. And that's probably one of the largest diaspora from outside of UAE. And throughout the COVID period, the last 2 years, UAE is one country with such a large population, which looked after every Indian as if they were their own citizens. They got very fair treatment. They were looked after by the UAE government and businesses in UAE as a part of their family. And not once did India receive a request from anybody in UAE that they want to come back home or that they want to be extradited or brought back to India. And that is something for which all of us in India, not only the government, but I think 130 crore Indians are grateful to the UAE. And I think that is reflective of the strong bonds that we have, and that has actually reinforced our mutual commitment to each other.
Number 81.
I'd just like to add a point to what Minister Saab has said. And I think this is something which you need to go through the agreement in detail. But just to give an example, we've given tariff concession to UAE on gold, and they've eliminated tariffs on jewelry. You can understand what that dynamic means. Look at the employment it creates here, look at the trade that is created there. So you can go through sector after sector, and you will see that this is a very mutually beneficial agreement.
Thank you. Nivedita, please. After that, Abhishek will come to you. Then yours.
Good evening and congratulations to both the sides. I'm Nivedita from ANI.
Can you remove the mask at least till you ask a question?
I'm Nivedita from ANI. Congratulations to both the sides for this FTA. Two questions, sir. When will the CEPA come into effect? And secondly, as we're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, how does this comprehensive economic agreement, boost manufacturing and, the other aspects of Atmanirbhar Bharat?
Well, there are certain formalities on the UAE side. They have to take this to the cabinet and do the necessary government formalities before this can come into effect. But broadly, we have agreed that this process should take about 60 days or thereabouts. So we do believe that we are looking for something like a Labor Day or a first week of May kind of timeline where the CEPA will come into effect. I have also invited both the Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, to India in the first week of May, when we propose to have a series of business roundtables and business engagements in different cities in India to take this FTA to the people and see how our businesses can engage with each other much more. In terms of Atmanirbhar Bharat, I am on record on more than one occasion that when we talk of Atmanirbhar Bharat, a self-reliant India, we are talking not of closing India's doors, but actually opening India's doors wider for greater international engagement. India believes that in this globalized world, interconnected world, every country has certain competitive strengths, areas where they are, on a comparative basis, the better source of goods and services. And therefore, Atmanirbhar Bharat will result in growth in the Indian economy, will provide opportunities for lakhs and crores of our young brothers and sisters, will open new economic avenues. Only when we engage with different countries, we take products where they have the competitive edge from there to India, which will support the Indian economy and Indian ecosystem to also expand and in a competitive way provide goods and services to the world market. Let me give you one example, a concrete example. When we look at petrochemical goods that we hope to receive from the UAE at a cost competitive price, it will support our plastic industry in a big way. Plastic industry is a job generating sector. Lakhs and lakhs of people. And to my mind, plastic industry alone, if it becomes competitive, we add investments, we add technology upgradation, we have the potential to add probably 30-40 lakh jobs alone in the plastic industry, which will not only support our exports to UAE, but to all other parts of the world where we are looking at deepening our exports. This year we have seen exports rise to unprecedented and historic high of $400 billion on goods. On services also an all-time historical record of over $240 billion. So this is India's time. It is a moment that we have to seize opportunities. And Atmanirbhar Bharat is about seizing that opportunity, providing employment and jobs and business growth to India, providing our young startups with new opportunities, and engaging with the world from a position of strength. Thank you.
Thank you. I think next question we'll take from a guest from who have joined us online. Simon Kerr, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much. And
Yeah, kindly
congratulations.
introduce yourself, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Simeon Kerr from the Financial Times in Ras Al Khaimah. Thanks very much for taking the question, and congratulations. You outlined that 80% of tariffs on goods had been removed. Could you please identify the 20% of products and services that have not seen tariffs removed? Thank you very much.
Well, I think there are a few products which are sensitive to both countries, respectively, which have been kept out. Some of them are in the excluded list. Some of them will get tariff concessions over a period of time, which is a natural process in any such economic partnership. The details of that would be released in due course. But I can only assure you that this is an agreement which has come out of extensive stakeholder consultations, both in the UAE and India. And therefore, the few products which have been excluded, or a few which will have elimination of duties in a phased manner, are those where the domestic industry needed some more time to prepare for this engagement. And there are certain goods which have been kept in the exclusion list in both countries, which were the sensitive areas. More details would be given because that would be quite a lengthy list, but more details would be released to you in due course.
Thank you. Now, next question we'll have India Today, please. Sir, we'll take you, please. After that, we'll have next question from Al Bayan. So kindly be ready, our online guest, Al Bayan from Middle East. Yeah, please proceed.
Sir, this is Karishma here from India Today. Congratulations. I'd like to just know that how large is the agreement in size and how many total sectors have been covered under it, just to get a number.
Well, the size, if you really want to know, is in terms of, you want to know in terms of the size of the document? The document runs into 881 pages of fully legally scrutinized areas which have been covered. It's a very holistic agreement which covers goods, services, investment, intellectual property regime, government procurement, the trade remedies, settlement of disputes. It also has the annex I mentioned to you about pharmaceuticals, the first of its kind ever. It has a separate chapter on small and medium enterprises, the MSMEs, which have been recognized as being important and will play a fundamental role in maintaining the dynamism and enhancing the competitiveness of both economies. The agreement also has several elements on the services side, both what is included, some elements which have not been considered at this time appropriate to open up on both sides. So rules of origin. So in some sense, it's a complete and comprehensive agreement. It covers digital trade, covers sustainability. So a very, very wide array of subjects. And I can tell you, both teams which negotiated and the legal teams have literally burnt the midnight oil, working in shifts to come up with such a robust document which will stand the next maybe 50 years and ensure an organized and fair trade between both countries.
If you allow me just to add as well to that point, and you mentioned, Brother Piyush, I think something which is very vital. Digital trade, for instance, is a chapter, for instance, which is agile. Because the digital trade at the moment today has a bit of a ambiguity of the future, how the actually commerce will act on digital, and it's ever changing. So when we say comprehensive economic partnership agreement, it's comprehensive and it's very nimble, very agile as well agreement. There are some chapters that has aspects of a future that we can add and amend to it, and digital trade is one of those chapters that has that kind of nimbleness and agility to it.
To grow it
as well.
Thank you.
So more pages are coming to the 881. So just to say.
The next question is from Al Bayan. Please proceed. Yeah.
Yes, good evening, Your Excellencies. Congratulations on. My name is Wael Al-Lababidi from Al Bayan newspaper in Dubai. And my question is, does the UAE or India have any plans to replicate this SEPA comprehensive model of partnership in growing their ties with third countries? Thank you, and I will take the answer from any of Your Excellencies.
Other countries to join it? Will you answer it? I think
Well, if we get your question right, we're going to replicate, we're going to use the same model and work with other countries. But our main focus in the press conference today is on the UAE, India, SEPA. But for sure, there are many other FTA negotiations between India and many other countries. And from the UAE side, as you know, we're starting with Israel, Indonesia, and Turkey, Philippines, and many others. So the same model are going to be applied, but we're not going to add countries to this agreement, which were just concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
The next question is by Republic, please, and after that, Business Standard will be taking question, please. The Republic, please. And then we take Mustafa from Etihad. Kindly be ready. Yeah, please.
I'm Abhishek from Republic TV. My question for the UAE side, this figure of $100 billion, which is aimed at, is it separate from the earlier discussions or announcement that we had about the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund investments coming to India? Also, because Prime Minister mentioned UAE investments in Kashmir, what kind of numbers we are looking at? To the Indian side, because the Commerce Secretary mentioned about the gold duties, what's going to be the consequences for the off-books passage of gold, which is sometimes euphemistically called smuggling?
Well, I will take the first part, if you allow me, Excellency.
Yes. Yeah, please.
I will take the first part. On the 100 billion trade volume, this is a bilateral trade volume. It is totally different than the investment number which has been announced 3 years ago, the $75 billion. That is in progress. There's so many visibility studies and discussion between our sovereign wealth funds and investors. And from the numbers which was announced based on SEPA, this is basically about the flow on the trade and services and goods between both countries. That's totally two separate things.
But since the issue of Jammu Kashmir came up, I was witness to the MOU that DP World signed with the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Manoj Sinha, to set up a logistics hub in the Kashmir Valley. The MR Group of Dubai in the UAE is also looking at a very large complex of 5 lakh square feet being set up in Jammu Kashmir, amongst others. There's a lot of interest for food processing to come in. So there is an investment interest which is far exceeding our original expectations in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly from UAE, also from, as I said earlier, to some of the media which had asked me from other parts of the world, and from Indian investors.
If you allow me, Excellency, to add here, on Jammu and Kashmir, we had the leaders a few weeks ago visiting us in the UAE. Yes, the announcement with DB World was done during the visit, and Umar has been in discussion with the colleagues there. But there are some other plans as well, or studies on discussion on food security, food processing, food parks, investment in agriculture. So that's a totally different investment track which we're going to take, and it's going to be depending on the business-to-business discussion between us and the colleagues on Jammu and Kashmir.
Thank you so much. But final question: the consequences for gold smuggling with the duty removal.
No, I don't think.
I'll take that one. I'll take that one.
It has no relevance.
I don't think that
to
is
this.
relevant.
The jewelry is an integral part of our trade between UAE and India, and smuggling has nothing to do with this. That is a totally different process. We're having our own standards, we're applying it, and we're going to continue on that path. But whatever is coming here is going through the whole process on customs and the legalities process agreed between both of us. It's 20% from both sides when it comes to jewelries is the contribution of jewelries, and I'm sure it's going to be always an integral part of our trade between both nations.
Thank you. Next question is from Mustafa, and after that, Express. Possibly that will be the second last question. We're running against time. Thank you, Mustafa. Please. Please introduce yourself. Yeah, please.
Congratulations for the signing of this agreement. My question on the FDI front, how can this agreement can encourage or the speed of the flow for FDI between both countries?
It's the same issue that was asked earlier. You probably missed the response. This is a agreement which deals with goods and services. On investment, His Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister Modi have had several engagements. The investing companies from UAE like ADIA and other 100% government-owned funds have been given a zero income tax benefit to when they invest in India, and very aggressive plans are there for which we have a separate track. I had a meeting with my counterpart on investments through the high level Sheikh Hamid in UAE. We have a high level task force on investments where we discuss the investment plans going up to about $75 billion from UAE to India.
Thank you, Mustafa. Indian Express, possibly.
Congratulations to both sides on the agreement. This is Karanjeet Singh from the Indian Express. I had a question on mutual recognition of professional qualifications. Is there any movement on that in the agreement? And was there any discussions on air service agreements also, as I think Mr. Banna had also mentioned recently?
That is handled separately. Mutual recognition is something that professional bodies have to study each other's systems and come up with mutual recognition. But in principle, we have had discussions that we must encourage on both sides mutual recognition for bodies where we have very robust regulatory mechanisms. And I think the UAE has been very gracious in the annex on pharmaceuticals, and it's a good beginning for the future.
I think the aviation part is as well, like said, mentioned, is handled on a different air traffic agreement that will take on a different part. But I think with this, SEPA has really put a ground for the relationship between UAE and India to go forward. Like said, we are in the beginning of 2022. We want to see COVID-19 to go away, economy to opens up, trade and investments to come in, and you cannot do it without connectivity of airlines together and between both cities.
I can add, look at the strengths of the UAE, what they've been able to create in terms of world-class infrastructure, how they've been able to promote tourism and their aviation sector. So I think India values and welcomes both investments and greater cooperation with the UAE in these sectors, and the respective ministries actually were in a very advanced stage of a dialogue, for example, on aviation. But COVID hit us 2 years ago, and that has affected international aviation work. Though we have continued to work with each other through the air bubble, but I think in the post-COVID world, we'll look at much more aggressive growth in our engagement on the aviation side.
Possibly we'll take the last question from Hamad, who's just online from UAE. It's Hamad. Yeah, please, Hamad. Yeah, please, Hamad. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Hamid Raha from Abu Dhabi TV. I will ask my questions in English regarding the exchange trade between the United Arab Emirates and India in 2021, around $45 billion. That's around 164 billion dirhams. What's your expectation the next 5 years about the trade exchange between the United Arab Emirates and India? Thank you.
Well, this agreement will be a win-win for both countries. Even currently, we have a very balanced trade between the two countries, but very clearly we can see this growing very rapidly, and our expectation is that in the next 5 years, we'll see it grow to about $100 billion on goods, on merchandise trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.